Hello students, and welcome to our Localizer approach execution video. Before we jump into the cockpit, let's quickly discuss the objective of this maneuver and some key factors that we'll be focusing on. For all intents and purposes, a Localizer approach is very similar to an ILS approach, except that a pilot is not provided with vertical guidance or glide slope guidance throughout the approach to landing. If you have not watched our ILS approach execution video, we would suggest that you watch that video first and then return back to this one. In this maneuver execution video, we will not be covering detailed aerodynamics, maneuver diagrams, common student errors, or the ACS standards. This video is to simply explain and demonstrate the execution of the maneuver and will vary based on the aircraft you are flying. To see all of the additional details we just mentioned and to study this lesson's full-length presentation, podcasts, diagrams, flashcards, lesson quiz, and more, look up the Localizer approach lesson on our website at wificfi.com. Lastly, before we jump into the cockpit, there are a couple of key factors that we need to cover regarding this approach. Today we will be executing the Localizer Runway 3 approach to the Ogden, Utah airport. The identifier for the Ogden, Utah airport is KOGD. We would suggest pulling up this approach plate on a separate device or a separate screen to look at and follow along with us as we demonstrate it to you. One thing you'll notice is that this approach plate can be flown as an ILS or as a Localizer. Today we'll just be using it as a Localizer approach only. We are going to fly this approach with vectors to the final approach course, so we will not be flying the entire approach from the initial approach fix. If you would like to watch us fly the entire approach from the initial approach fix of Ryden, go back and watch our ILS approach video. But in an attempt to make this video a little bit shorter, we are just going to be doing vectors to the final approach course. We'll be vectored at 6,000 feet just outside of the final approach fix, which is Wolf. Again, as I just mentioned, we'll begin our video at 6,000 feet. We'll be vectored towards that final approach course, towards that Localizer, and while we're on our way there, we'll complete our approach ABC checklist. The ABC checklist for an approach is A equals our airspeed and our ATIS, so we'll get our airspeed under control. We'll be about 90 knots, 90 to 100 knots, and we'll get our ATIS or AWOS for the Ogden airport, where we'll go ahead and listen to the local weather. B is to build and brief the approach, so we'll build it in our GPS. If we've got a GPS, we'll make sure that we've got all of our Localizer frequencies in, airport frequencies, everything like that. We're going to build it into our navigation systems and our comm systems. And we will also brief the approach. So we'll get out the approach plate and we'll brief it verbally out loud. And then C is to complete the checklist. We'll complete the approach checklist. That's going to vary based on which aircraft you're flying, but we'll go ahead and just do a general kind of approach checklist in our flight today. After completing these items, we will join the final approach course outside the final approach fix and complete the approach to minimums under simulated instrument conditions. In other words, we'll not be looking outside the airplane, we'll not be using outside visual references. We'll then make a normal straight in landing to runway 3. So we'll cover the rest during the flight. Let's head out to the airplane and shoot this approach. Alright students, welcome out to the airplane as we are getting ready to shoot our Localizer approach to runway 3 in Ogden. Before we unpause the simulator and we demonstrate this approach to you, we just want to explain where we're at in the process, the next couple steps, and then we'll go ahead and do it. Again, we're getting vectored, we're pretending that we're getting vectored to the final approach course for this Localizer approach here. Okay. Let's go ahead and hop inside the cockpit. You can see it's a nice, beautiful day, but I want to show you, introduce you to the view that we're going to have until we land. That is this view here. We're only going to be doing this looking at our instruments. This is what we've got set up so far. We're at 6,000 feet, which is exactly where we want to be vectored onto the final approach course here. We're about 90 to 100 knots. Maybe I could even bump in a tiny bit of power, speed up a little bit. We're on a heading of about 210, 215. You can also see that we've put in the Localizer frequency of 111.7 for the Ogden Localizer. We've got 115.7 for the Ogden VOR in our backup for nav 1 in case we do need to do the missed approach. We're talking to Salt Lake approach on 121.1. That's the frequency for this area. And we are on, oh sorry, we've got Ogden Tower as our backup frequency, 118.7. We also have the Ogden ATIS put in here so that we can get the local weather. And I think that's about it. So we're going to continue on here. Again, we're going to go ahead and go through the ABC checklist: airspeed, ATIS, build brief, the approach, complete the approach checklist, and then we'll go ahead and shoot it. So let's go ahead and unpause our simulator and we'll continue on. First thing, airspeed and ATIS. Airspeed's looking good, 90 to 100 knots. I like that. So we've got our ATIS frequency in COM 2. We go ahead and click COM 2 right here, and we could listen to the ATIS. Doesn't pull anything up on the sim, but we'll just pretend that we got our ATIS. Next, let's say that ATC instructed us to turn left heading 130. So it'd say, okay, left heading 130, vectors for the localizer approach, localizer 3 approach in Ogden. So we'll turn 130. Great. Alright, so then we'll go ahead and build and brief the approach. Let's go ahead and brief it. So we're localizer runway 3. Localizer frequency is 111.7. We've got that tuned in, and I am briefing it from the approach plate right now, so you guys can go ahead and follow along with me. 11.7, we need to switch our CDI needle over to the localizer, and our approach course is 034, so you can see that we've got that 034 in there. Runway landing length 7252, touchdown and airport elevation 4473. We would then go ahead and read through our notes. We got non-standard takeoff and alternate minimums. We'd look through any notes and see if any of them were applicable to us. Now let's pretend ATC told us Cessna Wi-Fi CFI turn left heading 070 to intercept the localizer, maintain 6,000 until established. You're cleared for the localizer 3 approach in Ogden. So we'll say, okay, left heading 070, maintain 6,000, cleared for the localizer 3. Go ahead and make that turn for our intercept. Great. Then we can continue on with briefing our approach. So runway 3 helicopter visibility, blah blah blah. We look through here. Nothing is applying to us in the notes of the approach. We've got Mausers for our approach lights. Our missed approach procedures: climbing to 5,000, then climbing a left turn 9,000 direct to the Ogden VORTAC, and on Ogden VOR radial 263 to Moit and hold. Moit is 15.1 DME, where we'll continue the climb in the hold to 9,000. We've got all of our frequencies in: ATIS, Salt Lake approach, Ogden Tower. Ground control, we'll put that in and worry about that after our safe landing. We can see that our minimum safe altitude is 11,000 to the west of the Ogden VOR, 8,500 to the east of the Ogden VOR, and our minimums for today, our straight-in localizer minimums, are 4,880. We'll just call that 4,900 feet. Then we're going to go ahead and continue our turn here since our localizer is coming in. Intercept our localizer since ATC did clear us for this approach and to fly the localizer. Fantastic. Coming in here, so Wolf is 6 DME out. So what if we pop up our DME? Once that gets to 6, then we'll know that we are at Wolf, because Wolf is 6 DME from the localizer. So we've got about 3 miles before we're at our final approach fix, and we begin our descent. Wonderful. Again, 6,000 until Wolf. We'll then go ahead and descend down to 4,900 feet. The other thing that we're going to want to have up and ready is our timer. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that up and get it ready. Our timer, since we'll be about 90 knots, as you can see in the bottom right hand corner of the approach plate, the final approach fix to the missed approach point is 4.6 nautical miles. If you're flying at 90 knots, you got 3 minutes and 4 seconds. So if we don't see the runway environment at 3 minutes and 4 seconds, we don't have those things in sight that we need for landing, then we'll go ahead and go miss at 3 minutes and 4 seconds. Again, 4,900 feet are minimums. We need 3/4 statute mile visibility. You can see on our little mini map, we're coming up on Wolf, and we're flying on our localizer. Now, we're going to pretend that this glide slope does not work, hence the reason we're flying this as a localizer approach instead of a ILS approach. So we're just going to completely ignore this, and once we cross Wolf, we're going to establish a descent at about 800 feet per minute, and then we're going to get down and level out at that 4,900. So I'm actually going to adjust my altitude now. Just my altitude bug. Sorry, not my altitude. I can't descend until I cross Wolf. But I do have my altitude bug adjusted. There's 6 miles, so we just crossed Wolf. So now let's go ahead and click in our vertical speed and begin our descent. 7, maybe 800 feet per minute. And let's even extend 1 notch of flaps so that we can start slowing and preparing for our landing. Here, we're just going to be watching to make sure that we stay on our course, that our altitude's looking good, airspeed's looking good, and we also need to start our timer. I started that a little bit late, probably, let's say 5 seconds later, so we'll take this to 3 minutes. And we cannot go below, remember we decided 4,900 feet. The actual number is 4,880, but we're going to do 4,900 just for simplicity. And yes, I did start that timer a little bit late. I was setting everything else up, but it was probably about, I don't know, maybe even 8 seconds late. We can take it to maybe 2 minutes and 56 seconds instead of the 3 minutes and 4. Bringing back a little bit more power. Looking to kind of slow down on the approach here as we're descending. We have 200 feet to our minimums. Remember, we're going to take this all the way to our minimums, and then we're going to be kicking off the autopilot and everything. Looking for our runway for landing. Again, we've got 100 feet to our minimums. So we can go ahead and pop outside. Oh, look at that. What do we see? We've got our runway in sight. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and kick off our autopilot here. Hop inside, 500. Kick off the autopilot, and we'll just fly this in. Normal approach here. We can go ahead and extend our 2nd notch flaps on our glide slope. And we'll just do our normal landing. Following our glide slope in our path. So we came all the way down to our minimums, we leveled out, right? And we can hold that level out, look for the runway until we get to our missed approach point, which would have been that time. Okay. However, or what I was going to say is that varies from an ILS approach where you just get down to your minimums, you look and you go missed immediately if you don't see the runway. Here we can get down to our minimum altitude, our MDA, look for the runway, right? We can level out at that altitude and stay at that altitude until we get to our missed approach point where we'd have to go missed if we didn't see it. On our glide slope, glide path, everything like that, crossing the end of the runway, bring our power back to idle, making our normal landing right here, nice and gentle, right on our runway center line. Okay, that is it for our localizer approach. If you guys watched our ILS approach video before this, like we suggested to do, you would notice that this is very similar to that one. The only difference is at the end there, instead of following that glide slope, because we were pretending like it didn't work, right, our glide slope needle, we just established a nice safe descent at 800 feet per minute, got down to our minimums, leveled out. We can stay at that MDA as we look for the runway. If we don't have the runway environment in sight at the missed approach point, we'll go ahead and go missed. If we do have it before that and we can still make a safe landing, then we'll go ahead and make a safe normal landing on the center line of our runway and within the landing threshold. So that's it for this lesson, guys. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on our next approach lesson coming up soon.